There have been many films about the notorious Kray twins who ruled the East End of London in the 1950s and the 1960s. The following film that you are about to see is about Frances Kray, Reginald's first wife and true love. For the first time ever, here is a film about Frances Kray, née Shay. This is a film about her and the truth from her own family, not a Hollywood film with all the fiction trappings. The woman, the real person, as known to the people that knew her and loved her. Frances Kray, the truth.
Right. And can you tell me about your early life?
Well, really, my memory starts from Franny, Mum and Dad, Franny and Reggie onwards. I can't, I've lost me.
That's all right, that's all right. Okay, right. Start us again. Can you tell me about your early life?
Well, obviously, a big part of my early life was Franny, knowing her, having her in my life from age, around about, I suppose it must have been 3 my earliest memories, because, you know, they're pretty, they're crystal clear. Yeah, I was just a little girl. We lived in Wimborne Court, me and my mum and dad, and I used to spend quite a lot of time around Ormsby Street with Franny, where she'd wash me in the tin bath and sit in front of the fire, wrap me up in a towel.
Frances had struggled with mental health problems and at just 13 had tried to take her life. After marrying Reg, depression reared its head again and Frances was hospitalised.
And where did she first meet him?
On the doorstep at Ormsby Street when he went to call for my dad, and Franny opened the door.
That bit is true then in the film?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
the only thing that is, one of them.
Yeah, and I've said, as I've said, there was nothing that stood out about the girl that opened the door in that film. You know, there was nothing. She was very sameish, and, you know, Reggie, obviously Franny had something very special about her because he really did love her. I know he did. And I've read her diaries and I've read her written word, a lot of it. Oh God, I was spoon-fed it as a kid. Even her suicide notes, my nan used to read them to me. Then, till I was old enough to read them myself, and oh God, I'd spend time reading.
What did they
Used
say?
to console me. Oh, they were all different ones, and for different moods. There were quite a few suicide notes where she left her necklace to me and her things, and that I was there to compensate, which, I've had so many different feelings about that, because I think that's such a big responsibility to put on a little girl's shoulders. I often think how my granddad must have felt whenever he called my name, seeing a little Frances run towards him, same as with my nan. But my nan, her grief came out in anger, and she was a bitter woman, and my granddad was like gently heartbroken. Anyway, I'm writing about it.
Yeah, you're writing a book now, aren't you?
Yeah.
Do you want to say a little bit about that? Obviously, not too much.
It's
truth.
I've said it's not a gangster's book. It will have the Richardsons, the Krays, they feature in it because I had a relationship with Charlie Richardson's half brother. I was with him for 6 years. He's my daughter's father, so they'll get a mention. The twins have featured throughout my life. You know, as I've said, in nightclubs, I've had grief over them, from, you know, ignorant people, even up until, you know, the present day, when I've been absolutely slaughtered on Facebook by people who really should know better. They didn't have a clue who I was, and I was challenged so much. I've been called the really terrible derogatory names. So has my daughter. We've been through the mill, and we thought we'd get. We were hoping when we did the Express article that we'd get, you know, the great big British public would back us and see 2 females trying to fight a big American director, because I felt that we'd been bullied by the man with that film. I really do believe that he bullied us, and then he requested to meet us before the preview when we went to the screening with the journalists. He asked to see us, and because I said no, then I wasn't snubbing him. It was because I was very raw. My daughter was very raw. We didn't know what we were about to witness on the screen regarding our family. So I wasn't up for seeing him right then, because I was really emotional. I might not have been able to control myself, but being dignified and, you know, holding on to my temper and, you know, not reacting, it really didn't get us anywhere. I mean, had we caused a fuss and caused a real scene and screamed and shouted in that cinema, we probably would have got a lot more publicity and people would have known who we were, you know. I tried for Franny and for everybody, I didn't want to react, I didn't want to scream and shout, but during that film, I really don't know how I held myself, and I did have to leave before the end, and my Bonnie had to leave during, yeah.
She had been attracted to the glamour, holidays and the jewellery of being a gangster's girlfriend. Now she felt caged and owned by the firm.
Your first memories of Franny?
I can remember most of my memories of Franny involve her singing, smiling, laughing, being very happy, vivacious, and she was always soothing for me to be around. Life was quite hectic and Mum and Dad were pretty volatile, and when Franny was around everybody was on best behaviour because unbeknown to me she was very fragile when she was living with us in Wimborne Court. I remember her and Reggie. I remember we go to the park, it's around behind the Jeffrey Museum, there was a little park there that we used to go to. I've told you the story about the dog. When Nan and Granddad's Labrador went missing, it was quite funny because when we took her back, me and Reggie left Franny in the car. We walked to the 57 Ormsby Street, knocked on the door. My nan opened the door, took the dog in, thank you, and slammed the door in her face. Like left me with Reggie on the doorstep.
What's the name of the dog?
Blackie.
Right.
But he just picked me up, swooped me onto his shoulders, and took me back to the car. But I remember feeling an icy chill from the door even back then. I was only a little girl, but you pick up on things, didn't you? So as a kid, that's why I'm saying I never felt a sadness around Franny when I was around her. She must have always put on a show for me, I suppose, because I was the little one. Unfortunately, that show didn't continue because she always said she wouldn't do anything silly with me in the house. You know, she assured my Mum and Dad that she wouldn't do anything with me there. And that night that I wasn't there, I went and stayed at friends, and she killed herself in the bed we used to sleep in together.
On the 7th of June 1967, she took an overdose of sleeping pills. There had been a few attempts that year, but this was the last attempt, and it was to be fruitful. She had promised her brother that she would not do anything with the baby around. Her brother and Bubbles, his fiancée, had a little girl aged just 4 years old, also named Frances. She adored little Frances. She waited until young Frances was staying at a friend's house and found some hidden sleeping pills. She took them to the toddler's bedroom, took the pills, and lay there to die in her bed.
And I was at Ivy Swimming Pool the next day, and my dad came in there. I can see it still now. I can remember the gate creaking, and he came towards us and he said, they'd taken Franny away. And my mum went, where to? Because my mum assumed she'd been sectioned. And he said, to the morgue. It just stark, you know. And my mum and her friend, they both burst into tears, and I knew the morgue weren't a good place, you know. And then from then, you know, Franny weren't around. I was sent to my aunt's and Kent while the funeral took place. And we never went back to Wimborne Court again, although I think at one point my mum did want to go back there. But me and my mum went away for a while. Mum and Dad split, and as I've said, I never saw Reggie and Franny again. So, I hold on to all the memories that I have of them. Just general memories as a child with an uncle, him buying me sweets, giving me money. 2 bob was a lot of money back then. He'd give me that. I can remember he once gave me a £5 when I was with my mate's daughter, and she was flabbergasted. That was a real lot of money.
Reggie would stay out all night and come home in the early hours drunk. Frances was often left alone in the flat that they shared, cut off from the world. This was not the wedded bliss that she had hoped for. The downhill spiral had begun.
Okay. What was he like as a person? Because all the films have come out, all the documentaries, la la la, but you actually knew him, so this is quite different. What
I,
was he like?
I only know him from a child's perspective and how he was to me, and I never felt a bad vibe off of Reggie. And I can remember when I was in Violets, I can't say that it's crystal clear memories of Ronnie, but I remember the presence of him, and I never felt threatened by them. And when I was at Violets, I always felt comfortable and safe. I can only speak on from a child's perspective, you know. And then from what I've seen as I got older, it didn't warm my heart or cheer me to see him and his brother, you know, shrivel up and die in prison. And I've said it and I'll say it again, they weren't accused of killing my aunt and they didn't kill my aunt. I've seen a lot worse people go in and out for far, far worse crimes than those two committed, you know, abusing children, such. You know, I don't think the punishment did fit the crime with them. And as I say, I'm not bitter towards them. I can't be. I don't want to be. I've got a child. I've got a grandchild to think of. And I want them to remember my aunt, our aunt, their great aunt, as the vivacious, lovely young woman that she was. She shone brightly for as long as she was here, you know.
Very brightly indeed. Right, going back to the beginning again, do you think that she was enticed by the Krays? You know, like the glamour of it all?
I think it was something between her and Reggie, a chemistry that they obviously had between one another. I don't think it was about the Kray name. She's met a man, she obviously loved him. She was with him for 5 years before she married him. You know.
Like, the women were throwing themselves at him, weren't they?
Well,
so he could have had anybody.
Well, yeah, I wasn't there to see that, but yeah, apparently so he was popular with the ladies.
Yeah.
I think Franny was more than enough for him though.
We get into that in a minute. So what did her parents feel about him?
Well, my nan and granddad never did like him.
Not keen?
No. They used to tell me that they thought they were athletes, which the twins were, but had been boxers. And my nan especially, put all the blame on the twins' shoulders. And I have said that I am here to, you know, there are a lot of people who need to take responsibility for Franny's death. And I'm the only one that won't take responsibility because I'm the only innocent child out of the lot of it.
Wrong.
And I'm not taking any responsibility at all, thank you. But I am going to try and clear it all up. And it's not just about Franny. My dad was in the film as well. Well, no, my dad was not in the film. Sorry about that.
Explain that part.
He was portrayed in it. He was shown, he was spoken to like he was a gopher. You know, they had no respect for him. Franny had no respect for him in it. And they loved one another, my dad and Franny. I mean, the way they used to, the way they wrote to one another, the admiration they had for one another, you know. So that's another thing, you know, she went against her loving brother to marry Reggie. She went against her angry mother, and her dad weren't too keen either. So Franny definitely had a mind of her own.
Yeah. So obviously the person that comes across and that's portrayed in these films, like as if she was victimised and she was like a little shy flower.
Yeah, the worst. I mean, the Krays was terrible. I watched that. I sat and sobbed when I watched that film. But you know, I was in a dark place myself at that time in my life. I had no fight in me. You know, I was having difficulty knowing my own name, let alone, you know, working out everything there. But it's been really daunting. It's been turmoil for us. We have been in turmoil because when Franny's diaries and private letters were leaked, her diary entries, you know, the diaries of a very sick woman.
How much were they sold for?
£24,000 is what I've been told at auction. When that was all leaked out, my daughter, she was 23. So that was the same age Franny was when she killed herself. You know, you can't help but having all these kind of the thoughts that go on. And to see my daughter stressed, she was stressed. She's very strong, Bonnie, but it did stress her out.
Yeah.
Her parents were not keen on Reg and showed the disdain. Her mother even wore black to their wedding. This was an omen of what was to come.
So when she told her parents that she was going to marry Reggie, what was the outcome of that?
Well, I wouldn't know. I mean, I know that it wouldn't have been met with jollities, I shouldn't think. But it went ahead and happened. You know, my nan dressed in navy blue for the wedding, and showed that she wasn't happy with it. You know, she couldn't have made it any clearer. And Franny, she was very carefree. You've seen all the pictures. A lot of people have seen those wedding pictures. Our people have assumed that Franny was shy or withdrawn or browbeaten in any way after seeing those, just the wedding photos. posing away for David Bailey.
Yeah.
She wasn't an actress, and that was very natural.
She looked like one though, didn't she?
Yeah,
Gorgeous.
but you could see she was more than happy on that day and enjoying it. It was her day.
So, Violet Kray, in a lot of the films and documentaries, apparently she didn't like Franny.
Yeah, but that's just not true. And anybody who actually knew the family knows that Violet loved Franny. She was very, very fond of her. Franny was very likeable.
And you met her, didn't you?
It was known around the family. You know, as older people that I met along the way, everybody said how much Violet loved Franny. She was impressed with the girl. You know, she could see how much her son loved her as well.
And Ronnie, again, to keep going back to it, apparently he didn't like her. And then there's all the stories about he made her take a bunch of pills to commit suicide. Yeah. But did he actually like her?
That is such nonsense about him making her take pills and, assisting her suicide or having anything to do with her death. Because she went to bed that night and took the pills herself, turned her lamp out and died, and I went to sleep. But with Ronnie, I think Franny, she held her own with everybody. You know, she was very quick-witted. So maybe towards the end, maybe Ronnie might have got away with a couple of things. So I don't know. You know, sibling rivalry, twins, these things happen, but a lot of it is fabrication.
They were imprisoned for the murders of George Cornell, shot by Ronnie in The Blind Beggar in March of 1966.
What do you think of all the books, all the documentaries, all the Krays and legends and all of that, and the portrayal of her?
It's been
it's
been tiresome. It really has, to see one thing after another. I mean, even watching programs like, I've watched One Foot in the Grave and the Kray twins' names come into it. You can't escape from it. It's all over the place, and I've always kept myself to myself, and I've never wanted to put myself in the limelight. But there's come a time where I've been winkled out now because I've had to come out and speak on behalf of my kids, so it don't keep trickling down and the nonsense is out there for the whole world to see. You know, he spread our family business, well, his family in his head. Brian Elgland, his imagination. Jackie Iams, no family input. I mean, I think we've been treated really shoddily, shoddily, and especially, I mean, I've had some mental health problems, and it hasn't done me the world of good, but I'm strong and I'm a survivor. You know, I'm not keeling over at any time soon, but it hasn't been great.
Yeah, so this has affected the family pretty badly, apart from yourself.
Well, I've had to see my daughter. My mum, you know, she's lived her life and she's kept quiet all her life. You know, and I respect her for that. That's her prerogative. You know, but I think we talked about Franny so blooming much over the years. There comes a time when you got, you know, we don't talk about her so much now.
And does it annoy you that somebody like this American director and the director of the Krays have made oceans of money, and the lady that wrote The Tragic Bride, all the rest of there's so many books out there, aren't they? And
I would think that any member of my family, Reggie included, who had a bit of love for me when I was a little girl, would not begrudge me earning any money out of my own family history. But it seems that people are very quick to call me a money grabber, I'm this, I'm that, but I have got a story to tell, you know, I've got something to back it. You know, it's quite a fascinating story if I do say so myself, and it's got a bit of everything in it because I want to talk about all kinds of mental health, covers so much.
Yeah.
So you know, I've had a little bit of everything in my life, I really have. So I can empathise with so many people, and I hope that people will be able to see, take a bit out of it for themselves, you know.
Sure. So, Franny, this is quite an important question. Why did you feel now was the time to speak up?
Why do I feel now? As I've said, it's literally been forced upon us. You know, back then, the Kemp movie came and went, and there's been years between, you know, that happening and now. And then it was just when my Bonnie came to me and started saying, Mum, there's going to be a film made about the Kray twins, and that was a few years ago. So she'd heard a whisper, it was on the grapevine, and then the book. I can't remember how I found out about that book, but I actually went out and got that book Well, I got it on Amazon, and it's the only Kray related book I've ever bought. I've never read any of the books along the way, but because obviously it had my Franny's name in the title, I had to read that. Read it, very emotional read. Started feeling angry, it lit the fire in my belly. I started thinking, do I want my daughter to have to read this crap about her aunt for the next so many years? Do I want my grandchild to read it?
Can we
or
just
anybody?
say that these people that have written these books, including this lady that wrote The Tragic Bride, were nothing to do with the family?
Nothing at all.
Haven't even asked you.
She was brought up in Oxton. She lived in Shoreditch. You know, and she has the audacity to, you know, I've said it to you before about these assumptions about Frances and Reggie's sex life. It's not her place to be assuming anything about my aunt's sex life.
Shouldn't even be speaking about.
It really is, again, a figment of her own imagination. She's assuming that. Oh, goodness, so personal. Yeah. So rude. What they've done is rude. What they've done is downright low. You know, and I would expect more. Oh, and hasn't he got enough money, Brian Elgland? Hasn't he got more than enough money?
So that scene in the film, you know, where he hits her on the floor, and then it sort of gives the idea that he rapes her.
Oh, that's just, to me, that's beneath contempt that he would do that. I just find it gratuitous, and I don't even want to talk about that, but it was disturbing to say the least.
So Emily Browning's portrayal was, what would you say?
Well, I wasn't impressed, and you know, she's not out to impress me, but I really would have had a bit of admiration for the girl if she'd have gone out of her way to study her role.
Absolutely.
The mentally fragile young girl who was dead at 23.
Yeah. Do you remember the last time that you saw Franny? What did you say? What did you do?
Well, the last words I said to Franny were, I love you, because I was going out the door. And I do tend to tell everybody I love them at the end of a phone call or as I'm leaving the premises. Yeah. So it was love you. And I kissed her and Reggie goodnight. And they were looking for holiday brochures. So that's another little thing, you know. She was actually discussing going on holiday with him that night. Talking about they'd go away in a few weeks' time.
So any ideas of what, just, you know, you get to a point when you're feeling quite suicidal or you've got health problems. Is there anything that triggered it, do you think?
Are you talking about Franny?
Franny, yeah.
Triggered it, I think it was, my dad was a manic depressive. I think it was a family trait, a mental health problem. Franny did have a death wish that I've said about. She always said that she wouldn't live past 25. And she was determined to die. She made a few attempts towards the end.
And did anybody help her with her mental health problems? I mean, you don't have that kind of help that you do now, do you?
Well, somebody very close to me sat up with Franny night upon night, you know, talking, trying to be positive. And Franny would come back ultimately that she didn't want to be here.
Sure. Tough question. Did you still sleep in her bed after that?
No, we never went back there.
Sorry about asking.
No,
I told you earlier, didn't you?
No, that's all right. And I don't know how I would have been if I'd have ever gone back to that flat as a little girl. Would I have adjusted? I think I would have been talking to her even more than I did when I didn't go back there, because I carried her around me as a little girl. That's all right, darling. But when I was a little girl, I can remember actually looking in the mirror. I was quite obsessed with her. I used to think I could see her and feel her, and you know, and it still goes on to this day. That's why I'm very confident about it, because I really do believe she would so want me to fight her corner, because nobody has. Yeah. Everybody's just read what strangers have written and what imaginative directors have put out there globally now. You know, it's not just contained in England. It's now all around for everybody to see, with no consideration for her bloodline, her family. The fact that, you know, I've had a mental breakdown like Franny did. Was delivered to the same hospital as her, and you know, I worry about my daughter as well, and they haven't taken that into consideration at all. I don't appreciate that.
It's all been very impersonal, hasn't it? The whole thing with the Krays and what's been written in all the films. Can you explain what this lovely chap is?
It's my what I've got left of Franny. When my granddad died, I went round to Jeffrey Street, when they lived in Jeffrey Street, and this is what I took. It was on the back of their little red settee that used to be in Ormsby Street, and then they had that in Jeffrey Street as well. Yeah, this is a pyjama case that's like over 60 years. It used to play Brahms' Lullaby.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but it's busted now.
What do you think they should make of all of this? All the hoo-ha today?
Oh, do you know what? I don't know. If she looks at the pictures of herself, then she'd probably think, wow, yeah, I'm worth it, look at me.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think I'd like to think that all my family is saying, Fran, we are sorry, girl, to leave, even Reggie, Ronnie, look at the kids down there struggling.
Frances had wanted to be buried in her maiden name and had changed her surname back to Shay by deed poll before her death. To the horror of the Shay family, Reggie buried Frances in the Kray plot and in her wedding dress against her mother's wishes. Frances had died at just 23 years old. Her family would never get over the pain of losing their dear, beautiful daughter.
Say one thing to her, what would it be?
It's so difficult to think of one thing that I would say to her. I've said, from a little girl, it would be, why did you leave me? And now it'd be, could you ever have dreamed of how things would have turned out? And to a certain degree, I'm rewriting a little bit of history, and I'm trying to take the reins and get my family history out there correctly.
In your book.
Yeah, and for Franny, and you know, for all of them to maybe rest in peace and think, well, people have got a decent picture, a sensible
the
picture
truth
now.
Of it, not just some, hot director.
Yeah,
with a
and
lot of
I've
money.
had quite a bit of validation as well, which that's good. A lot of people that really doubted me have turned around, and they can understand. They're understanding a lot more now, which I don't need validating, but yeah, thank you for that.